evening and welcome to Film Forum, Atlanta's best and only movie talk show where we keep you in touch with the film industry here in Georgia as well as review the latest films. I'm Steve Markos. I'm your host. With me as always, Aron Siegel. Aron, you ready for another show tonight?
I'm all revved up and ready to go, Steve.
As usual, right? All right, tonight we have two films as usual. Again, we'll be reviewing two of the latest movies. Aron's going to tell you what we got for you tonight.
Well, tonight on Film Forum we have Jurassic Park, the most talked about film of the decade, it seems like, and we've also got Guilty as Sin.
All right, and then directly after that, we'll be back for our Critics' Choice. This time we're doing our favorite animated movies, or animation film, or whatever. And then after that, we have a very special guest as usual. Aron's rounding him up. Aron, who's coming on tonight?
Tonight we've got Guy Dillamay. He's a still photographer. And he'll be on later in the show.
All right, that sounds like a winner of a show. Everyone needs to tune in tonight. We might as well get started. We got a lot to cover. What movie do you want to review first?
I think I'll do Jurassic Park.
All right, we don't want to keep you waiting out there. Everybody wants to hear about it. All right, go ahead.
Okay. A visionary billionaire designs and funds the ultimate amusement park filled with dinosaurs. And what he does is he funds scientists to discover how to clone dinosaurs and puts them in an amusement park down in Costa Rica. And what we've got is a scene from Jurassic Park where this a billionaire has rounded up a group of scientists to endorse his park, and in the middle of the tour something goes wrong.
Do you feel that? What is that?
Keep absolutely still. This vision's based on movement. Turn the light off. Turn the light off.
Turn the light off!
And that's a scene from Jurassic Park, which opens this Friday with sneak previews all tomorrow night. That's Thursday night. It stars Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, and Richard Attenborough. Richard Attenborough.
Yeah.
And Steve, why don't you go ahead and give me your opinions about what.
All right, here we go. Most talked about movie in a while. Whenever a movie's hyped up this much, it's almost impossible to live up to expectations. In other words, you go into this movie looking for the flaws. If this was a no-name film, I'd say this might be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but you're looking for the flaws, and there are a couple flaws. And but even so, I thought this movie was an excellent film. I thought it was a great movie, and because mainly of the special effects. It's 1993 Oscar-winning special effects right here. I predict it now.
Definitely.
I don't care what else comes out. It really looked great.
The special effects are just incredible, and I want to recommend this film that if you're going to see this, don't wait for this on home video. Go see this in a theater, in the right environment, the proper setting with the special effects. I mean, it's like watching Earthquake on your home television set. It doesn't make the same impact on you. The sense around was the big thing with Earthquake. With Jurassic Park, when the dinosaur hits the ground, when you feel the footsteps of the dinosaur, you literally feel the footsteps of the dinosaurs.
We were in a good theater with sound over at
Parkside.
Yeah, one of the good theaters. The thing about the dinosaur special effects in the film here is that I think there's been effects done just as well in other movies, particularly the Alien series, which won Academy Awards. But when it's an alien monster, we've come to expect good special effects. But dinosaur movies, through the history of cinema, have been horrible. Basically, they're either men in suits or lizards that they get a close-up on and stick a horn on, like in 2 million BC and crap like that. So finally, we're in awe. When the scientists see these monsters, their mouths drop open. And I'm in the theater, and my mouth is dropping open, and it's like they're real. I'm saying this, I'm finally seeing real live dinosaurs. They're back. It looked that good, I thought.
Yeah, I kept getting the feeling they were very similar to like looking at elephants or something.
Yeah.
It was that kind of texture and that kind of, they were
We're
that
so,
close.
yeah, we're so used to the crappy dinosaur effects. As
Right.
far as the action, again, this was on the level of Aliens, the second Aliens. That's the way I compare it. Remember in
Right.
Aliens you had the monsters chasing around? Well, this is the dinosaurs. The movie is at its best when the dinosaurs are on the screen, when the other part of the movie to me is just kind of average. But I really enjoyed the action is at the end is really tense.
This isn't a movie for kids, I'd say, under 10.
Well, I'll tell you what, I thought of, people are going to ask, hey, should my kids go to see this? I think this is on the exact same level of violence and tension as Jaws.
Yeah.
And since most people see Jaws, if you feel your kids are old enough and mature enough to see Jaws, then see Jurassic Park. If you don't want them seeing Jaws, don't see Jurassic Park. I mentioned two flaws in the film. One was the sequel city ending.
Oh, yeah.
Which I kind of like things
There's
tied up.
Several
Yeah.
different openings. to
Someone
the
told me the
sequels.
book ended that way also. And the other flaw of the film was that you have to be zero IQ not to figure out who's going to get killed in this movie. I mean, as soon as the guy opens his mouth, you know whether he's going to live or
He's
die.
a good guy or a bad guy. If
And
it's
I also-
a bad guy, he usually gets
Yeah,
killed.
I also heard that was a flaw of the book. The Jeff Goldblum character is the limbo character. He's the only one you really don't know about, and I don't know why he was in the movie except for maybe that part and to throw out a few sarcastic comments.
The only flaws that I saw in this film was the fact that they actually cloned these carnivorous dinosaurs. Why clone the carnivorous ones? Why not just do the
Then you wouldn't have a
herbivores?
movie.
Exactly.
So anyway, I give it 3.5 stars. Like I said, I'd give it 4 stars if this was a no-name movie. Because of the hype, you kind of take off a little bit. 3.5 stars.
That's funny because that's exactly what I gave
Well,
it. 3.5
yeah.
stars.
Like I said, I recommend it. I'd see it again, and I say it's worth the $6 to see it. And remember, they're raising ticket prices for this movie.
So
They're trying to get you for everything they can get.
catch
you
it
for.
at a matinee. It's the same special effects and everything, and it's a lot cheaper. So.
Yeah, but well worth the money. I really enjoyed it. All right, on to our second film. Our second film came out last Friday. It's called Guilty as Sin, stars Don Johnson and Rebecca De Mornay. When lifelong womanizer David Greenhill is accused of murdering his rich wife, he hires hotshot and beautiful attorney Jennifer Haynes to defend him. Now, right off the bat, he tries to wield his womanizing powers on her, and when he finds out that she really doesn't want anything to do with him, he instead becomes determined to turn her life upside down. When Jennifer realizes what he's trying to do, she tries to dump him as a client, but the legal system won't allow it. Therefore, forced to defend a man who is constantly harassing her, she decides to fight back with a few tricks of her own. In the scene we're about to take a look at, David is threatening Jennifer with legal action because she's tried to double-cross him.
But frankly, I'm beginning to tire of you. You're not nearly as tough or as smart as I thought you were.
I have no further questions. Witness may step down.
Or I could sue your firm for malpractice and collect a goddamn fortune over that stupid, phony evidence you planted. Lawyer tries to frame her own client, film at 11. Honey, you would be finished forever.
Why don't you just do it?
Because we've been close, haven't we, Jennifer?
All right, that's a scene from Guilty as Sin, which came out last week. And we'd like to remind you, we are a live call-in show. If you have any questions, comments, or criticisms, feel free to call us. And Aaron, what's your questions, comments, and criticisms here about Guilty as Sin?
Guilty as Sin. Well, first of all, I have to say that the Don Johnson character was, I really loved his character. I really thought he did an excellent job of being obnoxious, of being a womanizing character. Rebecca De Mornay seemed to have problems walking in heels for some reason.
Well, I was going to mention the Don Johnson character. One of the reasons I didn't like the movie, by the way, was because the Don Johnson character was so sleazy, so evil, bad, it almost gets to be ridiculous and not believable. For instance, remember in Cliffhanger, the John Lithgow character, he was so callous, so cold-hearted, it almost becomes ridiculous and not believable. And I think that's what happened here. This guy got under my skin. I didn't like him. I thought it was just too much.
You have to realize that that the Don Johnson character is just so much of a womanizer that this is absolutely natural for this kind of character.
Yeah, but he becomes cardboard. There's no other thing about him. You know what I'm saying? I just.
I don't follow you. See if you can explain it.
He seemed to be so ridiculous. It's like saying, wait a second, there's no one like this in real life to
You'd
me.
be real surprised. They're probably.
I don't know. He got on my nerves. I didn't like him. Go ahead. What else?
I mean, because you remember when we were reviewing the film Watch It,
Mm-hmm.
and you mentioned that guy's philosophy on women.
Yeah.
Well, this is exactly what women will want to marry.
I don't know.
because he's just so self-confident and so cocky about himself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I like the character that he portrayed.
Did you like the plot, the movie?
I thought the plot was pretty good. It was along the lines of Basic Instinct as far as the Don Johnson character being the villain or the heavy in this.
Well, I thought that the gist of the movie was a battle of wits. He's trying to manipulate Jennifer Gaines. Jennifer finds out what's going on, and she's going to get back at him psychologically. She's going to try to ruin his life, and it seems to work out that way, this battle of wits. But at the end, it's like they say, forget this, and they throw in the typical slasher, violent conflict ending, just like you've seen a million times. Why couldn't she have done something psychologically to ruin his life instead? I think that the movie, that was the straw in the camel's back. The movie I already thought was bad. I didn't think it was interesting.
I think the movie fell apart towards the end.
But you go to a movie and you're paying $6, you want to see something different. Here it is, the same ending as in Fatal Attraction, Hand at Rock's Cradle, over and over and over. And why couldn't they do the battle of wits, carry it out to the end? Why did they have to opt for the cop-out?
Okay.
One other thing, I didn't think the movie was that interesting. I didn't find anything intriguing about the movie. No clues that made me want to even figure out if he was guilty or not guilty.
Okay.
I just didn't like it.
I'm going to give this film 2 stars.
I'm going with 1 star.
So we end up with 1.5 stars?
1.5 stars.
And we've also got a phone call. Caller?
Yes, couldn't Jennifer have filed a restraining order against her harasser?
What happens is that Jennifer is his attorney, and so she cannot file a restraining order against her client.
Yeah, she tries to get out of it, and she already started the case, and the judge says, look, you've started this case. You can't just drop your client. It's unethical. And the reason she couldn't get out of it, she could get out of it, but it would ruin her career. She'd be done as a lawyer, and that's what she was faced with. Does she turn this guy in? Does she plant phony evidence? What does she do without ruining her career? So she was kind of between a rock and a hard place.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Did you want to go ahead and make that comment about Jurassic Park?
Oh, yeah, Jurassic Park, the guy who called last week with the question about the anatomy of the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs are female, so I guess you're just going to have to stick to your Playgirls if you're going to get your get a little excitement. All righty.
Why don't we go ahead and take a look at the Metro Atlanta box office. These are films that you went to see this past weekend. And at number 10 is Indecent Proposal. It holds on to the number 10 spot after 9 weeks in the top 10. A disappointing debut at number 9 is Life with Mikey. This is real disappointing for Buena Vista distributors. They were expecting a lot more.
Maybe we should have seen that instead of Guilty of Suspicion. I picked Guilty of Suspicion. I wish I hadn't.
Okay. Dropping from number 7 to number 8, 5th week in the top 10 is Dave. This is a Capra-esque kind of film.
And that's number 4 nationally. So doing a lot better nationally than here in Atlanta.
Falling from number 6 and in the second week of release is Super Mario Brothers, chiming in at number 7. And falling from number 5 to number 6 now is Sliver with Sharon Stone. At number 5 this week is Hot Shots Part 2. That's the third week in the top 5. And number 4 is Menace to Society. It rises to number 5.
And that's number 9 nationally, so it's the exact opposite of Dave. It's doing better here in Atlanta than nationally.
And number 3 is Guilty as Sin, the film that we just reviewed. It debuts at number 3. And number 2 is a film we reviewed last week, Made in America. It remains at number 2 for the second week in a row.
Second week.
And number 1 for the second week in a row is Cliffhanger with Sylvester Stallone.
And I don't think that'll be number 1 next week.
Probably not.
Not after Jurassic Park. Now, also gone this week, Posse lasted 3 weeks, which really surprised me, and Dragon lasted 4 weeks. And a quick word on Cliffhanger. I thought it was passable action, adventure, entertainment. Nothing outstanding.
Nothing outstanding.
And so if people ask, what about Cliffhanger? So what are we going to get on with the Critics' Choice?
Critics' Choice.
All right, this week on Critics' Choice, we have our favorite animated movies. Aaron's going to tell you about his first. What's your favorite 3, Aaron?
Okay, animated films. I want to give honorable mention to some Ralph Bakshi films, American Hot Wax and Heavy Metal. Then I want to get on to the films that meant the most to me animated-wise. Walt Disney's Pinocchio came out in 1940. It's a timeless classic fairy tale about a puppet that the puppet maker gets his wish, and he has a son, but the son is made out of wood. He wants his son to be a real boy. You know the story. Anyway, number 2 is Aladdin. This came out last year, 1992. It's Walt Disney as well. It's the story of Aladdin and the magic lamp with the genie, and the genie's voice is Robin Williams. Number 1, my favorite animated film of all time, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which is being re-released. Came out in 1937. Thank you, Oxford Bookstore, because it's not available on home video, so they had to look it up somewhere else. Anyway, that's it.
All right, and I really have no favorite animated movies. I'm not an animation fan, but I like to just discuss animation really quick. The first time I noticed good animation as a grown-up was when I watched Lady and the Tramp, which was re-released about 4, 5, 6 years ago on video. I was so used to the Saturday afternoon cartoons when the character talks, and if someone's not talking, they're just frozen pictures out there, and the action's real choppy, and the mouths just go like this. But in Lady and the Tramp, everything is so smooth, and characters that aren't in the foreground are actually moving in the background like real life. Disney, I'm not sure in the old days, but nowadays actually has actors act out the scenes, as in Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin. They videotape them, and then the animators watch that, and that's what they draw from. But I was thinking about an interesting thing about animation is that animation hasn't changed since the beginning. Now, technologically, it may be easier to animate, but the only thing that's really improved on animation is the audio, the sound. In other words, there's nothing they can draw now that they couldn't draw back 40 years ago, which means you can re-release a movie that came out in 1937 or 1940.
Which they are doing with Snow White.
Release it in 1993, and you have a movie that holds up. It's just as good for kids now as it was back then. I read a quote from Disney saying when they released Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, this is the easiest $50 million we're ever going to make. Doesn't cost them a thing to do it. And amazing, 50 years from now, they could probably re-release these as well. You can't do this with real movies, with actors, because movies from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s are so outdated by today's standards of acting techniques, directing techniques, special effects, that they just wouldn't hold up by today's standards. But the animation 40 years ago is just as good as today, and that's why they're re-releasing them. And it's interesting philosophy on animation there.
All right. Let's go ahead and take a look at the home video release.
All right, home video release. This is what's coming out on video this week. Pull out our list here. I guess there's only 2, according to our sources. Forever Young, which came out last Christmas time with Mel Gibson. I thought it was an average movie, nothing special about it. And Shadow of the Wolf, which must have not been too good, because I swear that thing didn't come out much more than a couple months ago. And it's already out on video. And on pay-per-view TV, we have School Ties, Distinguished Gent, which was a very disappointing Eddie Murphy film.
Right.
Yeah, Distinguished Gentleman.
Right.
Abbreviating there. Traces of Red, which I did not see. That's a Jim Belushi film.
And Larry Fishburne.
And it's kind of a cop, serial killer type thing. And Trespass, which our
guest from last week, Tiny Lister, was in.
And I love Trespass. I thought it was a great no-brainer action movie that, sure, it has cardboard characters and no plot, but who cares? It's full of action. That's why I like Trespass so much. That was filmed in Atlanta.
All right. Each week on Film Forum, we have a special guest. This week is no different. We have Guy Dillamay. He's a still photographer. And what we'd like to do now is welcome Guy to the show. Welcome to the show, Guy.
Nice to see you again, Aaron.
How you doing, Guy?
Nice to meet you again.
So you're a still photographer, and what purpose does still photography have in the movies?
Exactly.
Well, still photographers are usually the last people that are thought of on a show because of the fact that it's motion picture, it's sound. Nobody ever thinks of the still photographers, but they have several functions on an average film, 4 really that I can come up with right off the top of my head. One is to document the scenes of a film so that when you get posters, advertisements, your video boxes, those are all out of the still photographer's files. Other things that they can use these shots for would be for behind the scenes, things that you see in the trade industries where you see the directors working with the actors and these kind of things. Those are all supplied by the still photographer's files. You see shots within the movie where, say, the 2 characters were married or something, and there's a wedding shot of them. That was taken during what's called a gallery session, where the photographer works with the talent, sets the shots up, and then gives it to the prop department.
So in other words, he's not filming it as they're actually
No, he
doing
does.
the movie.
The scenes that you see when he or she is making the still shots of the scene is taken at the same time the actors are acting and the movie cameras are rolling. They use special camera equipment so that you can't hear the cameras in the background. But to get your best action out of an actor, it's always best to get it while he's doing his performance. If you ask him to what's termed hold for stills, most performing actors will not perform for still camera. So you get a very pasty kind of look at them. You don't get that same kind of intensity.
Now, what separates you from a regular photographer, like a studio photographer, and such? What kind of training do you need, or what is there? You said there's a special camera. What? How are the pictures different? The photos different?
Well, your types of composition that you use, your function is to try to match exactly what the cinematographer is putting on film, so that when you look at a still, you get the same flavor, the same kind of feel, the same kind of sense of what the motion picture was all about. As opposed to a studio photographer, as a fashion photographer or something, he goes in, he lights it his way, usually beauty lighting if you're working with models. And that is a very, almost a kind of a synthetic kind of a look to it. It doesn't have the same kind of depth or intensity. So your job as a still photographer is to be able to read and interpret what the cinematographer is doing and capture that with the same kind of lenses he's using so that you've got the same perspective that he's got, but yet still compose it in a way that they can use it for newspapers or whatever.
How did you get your start?
That was interesting. I used to do a lot of work for the Limelight, and we brought in the motion picture Slugger's Wife, and I got to work with some of the crew members on that, and I had always had a background in journalistic photography, which is very similar to doing a motion picture, because you've got to be able to see your shot quickly, get in there, get it, and then try to get off the set so that you're not a distraction to the actors, which a lot of times they're very antsy about having still cameras. They don't worry about acting for movie cameras, because if there's a bad shot on them, a bad angle, it's gone within seconds. But with a still, that thing lives, forever on them.
Well, then is journalistic photography more related to what you're doing than fashion photography?
Definitely, much more so, because you got to think quick, and you don't have control over the lighting. When you see a lighting setup, you've got to be able to read that so that it records on your film, and you have no control over the lighting at all.
Let me ask you this. Is it possible to make a photograph from video or from film?
In cases where they actually have no choice, they have to take a still, they can take it from the motion picture stock. It also is 35 millimeter film like we use in stills. The only thing is, on our film, we run a full frame left to right, where on motion picture stock,
half a frame, isn't
it prints half a frame widthwise. So their still is about that big, where our negatives are much bigger, and therefore the
Better quality.
Plus the grain process in motion picture stock is much more grainy than it
I
is on
understand
still film.
you've brought some stills for us to look at.
Okay, yeah, out of some of the past films. What I was talking about when they use them for trade industries, this just came out about a month or so ago for the Cannes Film Fest.
This was in Variety?
Yes, Variety magazine did a big spread on the different motion pictures that were coming out, and the Crime and Punishment film that I worked on, which was in Moscow. This was a 2-page spread that the producers put together to show, the buyers of motion picture what the movie was all about.
And these are all your stills?
Yeah, we were in Moscow for 2.5 months, and averaging about 5-6 rolls of film a day at 36 exposures. So thousands of stills are shot, and then they try to narrow it down to maybe a dozen or so. Okay. They use them in the other kinds of advertisement campaigns where they give the bios on the different actors.
Now, you took these
are
stills,
all stills as well.
And these were at the same time that the action was going on?
Yes. These are all shot during the take so that you get the same kind of intensity and same kind of feel.
Can we see some of your stills that are...
Okay, in book form.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do any of the pictures you ever do go on to be the
video
posters?
boxes and all? Often your posters are gallery sessions where they're taken into a studio because they need to have the lighting controlled, because the actor will not allow a gigantic blow-up of himself unless it's been airbrushed and everything else.
So these are more
from staff.
fashion photography
Right.
oriented.
Okay.
Right. Studio
We
photographers.
can go ahead and flip through these.
Yeah, this is a
rather
series that
quickly.
came out of Crime and Punishment. John Hurt, Crispin Glover. Location shots. They try to get the feel of where things were done. This actually was being in Moscow. different kind of character shots to try to give a feeling and a flavor of what the movie's all about. This was a film I just completed about 2 weeks ago, Stacy Keach. We shot this down in New Orleans and Mobile. David Keith, Robert Hayes.
What film is that?
Called Skip Tracer. It's a comedy, action, thriller kind of a thing. And,
When will that be coming out?
It's scheduled for release probably early spring of '94.
How would a budding photographer get started doing still photography?
Well, to get into this business, it's one of those things that unless you have experience, a producer's not going to take a chance because these are the only materials he's got as far as visuals to sell a film. And if he doesn't have good stills, he can't sell the project. If he can't sell the product, he's out a couple $1 million. So they're very, very skeptical about taking photographers that have not had the experience. It's the old catch-22. Without the experience, how do you get in? And so it's one of those vicious cycle kind of thing.
So maybe you're starting on maybe a low-budget movie or something
apprenticing
like that.
somewhere?
Yeah. Get on a real, B or C budget film where if it doesn't, if the stills are not that great, they can always pull them from the motion picture.
And what happens if, for instance, I don't even remember what I was going to say. All of a sudden my mind goes blank here, like it must have not been that important.
Okay.
I know what I was going to say. All right, say you go to get a job. If you have done journalism, could you get a job just saying, hey, this is what I've done in journalism, or they still want to see, but what have you done in movies?
Right. Because of the fact that on a set, still photographers are one of the lowest respected for some odd reason until they go into post-production and the marketing department screaming for stills. Because, one, we're not assigned to any particular department. We're associated with the camera department, but we're not under the control of the director of photography. We're not under the control of the director other than the fact that it's his set and everyone has to do what he says. But our direct responsibility goes to the producer. We answer only to the producer. Often he'll assign us to a unit publicist, and we work in conjunction with what we need to get. So we're almost like an eyesore to the average crew member when we walk on. It's like, oh, God, here comes a still photographer. He's going to get in our way. He's going to be a real pain in the butt, and he's going to get a free lunch out of it. So, you got to have a real good working rapport with the crew, and it's from working different shows, when to get in the way, when not to get in the way, because crews will abuse you if they can.
Okay. Thanks for being on the show, Guy.
Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Okay,
Nice talking with you.
that's all the time we've got. Be sure and tune in next Wednesday on Film Forum, where we'll have 2 feature releases. Our Critics' Choice will be Best Supporting Roles that stole the show, and our special guest will be a set dresser. That's next week, Film Forum, 10 p.m., Channel 12. See you next Wednesday.